everybody.
Hello, everyone. It's good to be with you on this Friday night. Welcome to the weekend with the Herbecks.
Yeah, it's a night out as couples. How about it, you guys? How about it?
So we want to just update you a little bit on our family because I think the bio you had is a little bit older. So we are actually in 2 weeks going to be celebrating our 35th wedding anniversary. And we have 8 grandchildren and 1 more on the way. So
Yeah, very good. And we're grateful to be able to be here with you tonight, partly because for us, this is a little bit different. I mean, we do things for, families and couples at different times, but we don't consider ourselves experts. We are, like we don't do this professionally. It's more like we're journeying and we're a work in progress, like everybody's a work in progress. And I think when our friend shared with us the topics and the ideas that you guys had in mind, both the experience and the encounter of making it, passing through this whole difficult COVID experience, and the pressure that it puts on families and households, and then it puts pressure on marriages and stuff. So we thought that one of the things we would do is we've got 2 short talks tonight. And the first one, we're going to kind of focus on sort of how we encountered COVID together and both the big picture and then what we saw, how the Lord was leading us through it. And then the second one is going to be a lot of practical stuff about what we actually did to sort of pivot and try to make the most of the time and to cooperate with God's grace in the matter. Sound good?
sounds good.
All right. So we kind of broke up the different things that we're going to share on. I want to start first with big picture. I mean, it kind of goes without saying that we are still living through, but have lived through really an epic moment in history of the world and the history of the church, a situation that is objectively very, very difficult and very, very challenging for a lot of different reasons. We're watching not only the medical challenge and the pressures that brings and all the COVID responses to COVID and the pressure that it brings. It's kind of oppressive and difficult, but also and I think, you guys are so close to us here in the United States, and many of my Canadian friends were watching our whole election process here this past year, 2020, and our politics was shaking. Our economics are shaking. Our church in different ways is shaking. Lots of challenges, lots of difficulties within the church itself. And kind of every time you turn around, it seemed like things that were foundational seemed to be shaking, and that's difficult. And so we without kind of stopping and thinking about it, all of us have been drawn into some kind of global, epic, challenging moment in history. And families feel the stress of that, I mean, one of the things I see is there's a line, this may sound kind of dramatic, but there's a line in Hebrews chapter 2, verse 14. And it says, the devil's strategy is to enslave the human race through the fear of death. The devil loves to tempt us in a struggle against death because death has a kind of power. And I was just thinking this last year, I mean, the whole world was confronted by an unseen enemy, and people are friends dying and causing a tremendous amount of stress. And whenever that kind of pressure happens, there's a spiritual dynamic too, not just political, social, economic, but a spiritual one that we're fighting. And one of the things that obviously we all experienced was it's a time of upheaval. The regular patterns and the grooves that we dug for ourselves and the habits, our daily habits, all of it kind of got thrown up in the air. And we just started living day by day. And so that's kind of the big picture. And what it does is it created, and we experienced it, I'll just talk about ourselves, what it began to create in us is kind of a growing anxiety, kind of underlying fear, and it kind of stays with you. And it's not so easy to get rid of. And we subconsciously just try to suppress it and not deal with it. Just like, okay, I'm going to buck up and I'm going to make the most of each day. But there's underlying realities that are happening that affect all of us. And so there's an image that I've thought about a number of times of how, the image of an iceberg, and our life is like that iceberg. And usually about 10% or 15% of the iceberg is above the water where you can see it. But under the surface, there's a whole lot more to that iceberg. And I think part of what started to emerge in us was this reality and awareness that, wow, there's a lot going on underneath here that I don't know if I want to look at very clearly, but I feel the pressure of it kind of internally. So Oh yeah. And so that was clear, kind of the background, the fundamental background of it. And then I thought, then there's two individuals who are going through this and having a different experience, each of us. And just to let you know a little bit about us, we're alike in some ways and we're very different in other ways. So why don't you describe what we put down here, Hannah?
I'd say we're mostly different. Maybe complementary is a good way to say it, but just for example, just in terms of temperaments, I tend to be more phlegmatic, which means I just tend to don't react really strongly to things, at least not overtly. I tend to be just kind of go with the flow. Peter is more choleric, so he tends to react more dramatically than I would to things. I'm more of a realist. He tends to be more of an idealist. I tend to be more introverted. He can be extremely extroverted. I process things internally and he processes them externally by talking about them. But fortunately for him, I'm a very good listener, probably a better listener than he is.
That's true.
And then, like I said, I'm not very expressive. I tend to be understated in kind of emotions, and Peter is more expressive. So we are very different in many ways. And I think, 30, almost 35 years of marriage definitely kind of rubs some of those rough edges off and has enabled us to really live and rejoice in those differences.
Yeah.
So,
and, and we had a kind of a good habit of life going, and good communication. And we were both had full life, full ministry, a lot of things going on that we were very engaged in and liking very much. And then like you, it all shut down. And then we found ourselves not having, and our house is usually a place where there's a lot of activity. We have kids and grandkids, but also young adults from ministry are at our house quite often. And then all that stuff got shut down as well. And so then we found ourselves, it's just us again.
No,
and,
we had Rachel.
Well, Rachel, yeah,
Yeah.
but I meant for the most part, we didn't have the kind of flow, but you're right. I mean, Rachel, our daughter Rachel was here, another young woman, but our house was quieter than it normally is for us. And so it caused us to have to encounter each other again, very directly and very personally. And one of the things we both have learned about our own backgrounds, none of us come from perfect families. Every family has stuff that we grew up with and we brought into the marriage, and we brought some of that dysfunction. And I think in some ways, in both our families, neither one of our families were good at dealing with negative feelings. You know what I mean? Being able to identify them, how to articulate them, how to do it in a way that was healthy, and sort of an lack of emotional health, you might say, in some dimensions of our life growing up. And so it's stuff that we've thought about and touched on in different ways in our marriage and learned a lot. And the Lord helped us a lot along the way. And it was kind of a real blessing for us. But it's interesting that COVID and the unique challenges that it produced, there's more of that stuff surfaced, and we realized that we're not complete, that there's more the Lord wants to teach us, and there's more there that he wants to show us. So some of our wounds that we brought into the marriage and we're not yet fully healed. And we had more to learn just about loving each other in a challenging situation and how to communicate.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So one of the things that helped, I have to say, one of the things that did help us that we leaned on was early in our marriage, some of the stuff I'm describing, we, in our first year of marriage, experienced it. And the Lord taught us a key lesson. I think I shared it maybe at the marriage event when I was with you guys, but it was a really decisive moment for us. And it actually helped us through some of this stuff, which is this. We had some kind of miscommunication, Deb and I, and I came home and it was clear something was wrong. Debbie was upset about something, but she was quietly upset. And I was asking her, how are things going? And she said, fine. And it was clear things weren't fine. And so for me, I had to say, okay, if something's wrong, say it right now. Let's talk. That's kind of the way I am. And I was young and I was, so we ended up having a little bit of a struggle, and I got frustrated. And I said, I raised my voice, and, it's kind of dumb, but that's what I did. And I walked out mad. And so I ended up going out for a long walk, and I came back later, and Debbie was in bed, and then I went to bed. She had already gone to bed. And there was one of the rules that the Lord taught us through this whole process is, scripture, don't let the sun go down on your anger. And I let the sun go down on my anger. she went to sleep, and I got up early in the morning because I'm an early morning riser. And I went downstairs to take a prayer time, and I was praying, and I felt pretty like righteous, like I was in the right and she was in the wrong, and I was praying, and I honestly felt like the Lord, I didn't hear anything audible, but the Lord in a very kind of direct way said, you can't talk to my daughter just any way you want to talk to my daughter. And that's kind of what I felt like. And I was thinking, yeah, I actually did raise my voice last night in a way that wasn't good, wasn't helpful. And then, make a long story short, I felt like the Lord prompted me to say, go up and reconcile, go up and ask ask Debbie for forgiveness. And I'm like, no, it's her fault. She started it. She should be asking me rather than the other way around. So I was young and immature. And so again, a long story short, went upstairs, we talked, we reconciled, and we made a decision together to say, you know what, let's do this. Let's make a list of kind of practical things when we're struggling, when we're in the heat of battle, when we're angry with each other, that we're going to do to help us be able to have an argument that's healthy, to express our emotions and anger in a way that's healthy, all of it under the lordship of Jesus with the help of the Holy Spirit. And it was a very decisive time for us. You remember that, don't you?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I definitely remember that.
Yeah.
So when we got into the COVID situation in particular, and you're in it right now, the lockdown.
It's hard.
The 3 words you hate to hear that come to you are stay at home, right? Because we heard those repeatedly, and we're fortunately a few steps ahead of you. But I remember that sense of like, oh, here we go again. Thought it was getting better, stay at home. But while we were staying at home, we were learning again in a deeper way how to resolve conflict, how to communicate with one another, how to relate in ways that was emotionally mature as opposed to immature, because we were just spending more time together. So obviously spending more time together, we had more opportunities to get on each other's nerves, to be annoyed by one another, to be impatient, to wish, the house was cleaner or it was quieter, or whatever it was that was more evident than it was before, when we were able to come and go and do our own thing. So I think that was really good. We continued to hold fast to things like, we're going to make a commitment to repent right away and not let things hang in the air. We're going to forgive one another freely and easily, and to be able to really do that consistently and regularly. And we did have lots of opportunities to do that as things came up and we were annoyed with one another, just in kind of the daily flow. So I think we learned again, or relearned, that just familiarity does not give us the right to treat one another in a particular way that isn't full of charity and kindness and compassion. And so I think just having to practice that, and it's hard. Being in Canada, most of our lockdown was in cold weather. And so it wasn't like we were just able to kind of get out and get distance. We were really kind of on top of each other more. So I think it was good just to practice some of the principles that we've told other couples about, and some of the principles we've had to live out, our whole married life.
Yeah, we had a significant Sunday where a number of weeks into the lockdown, we could tell that we were stressed. And my daughter, who's living with us, is stressed. She's like me. She's an external processor too. And usually when you've got negative feelings going on, or you're hurt, or you're sad, or you're afraid to be vulnerable, that troubled water under there comes out verbally with external processors, and finding fault. And that's not really the issue. The fault you're finding is not really the issue. There's something deeper going on. And so we felt this kind of tension, and Deb was suggesting, maybe we should just get some time as a family here in the house and sit down, and let's get develop a little pattern and just discuss schedules and things we were talking. And then my daughter, I could tell she suggests, maybe we should talk about how we feel, and so, oh, there's a thought, and we were sat outside. It happened to be sunny. It was an unusually sunny day, and we were sitting out on the deck, and a friend of ours, a guy I knew from our parish, Debbie knew, and then we know their son even better, Rachel did too. just died of COVID. Like the both parents, they're younger than us, I think. Aren't they younger than us? We're a little bit older. And they both went in the hospital, and it sounded like they were both going to die. One of them died. Miguel died. The father died, excuse me. And then the wife was still very sick. And so we just were sitting out there, and we just started talking about, let's not talk right now about schedules and everybody's responsibilities in the house. How are we doing with what's going on? And then we kind of just went around and began to share the sadness, the grief, the fear, the anger. We cried, we laughed, and we were there for a good, I don't know, hour and a half, maybe something like that. Sitting there, and it just, the time just kind of flew by, and we were engaging from the heart, and it was healing, just going through the process of having that conversation and being able to express our sadness and of the loss of our good brother and friends, and just the sadness of the family, and then being able to talk about what it feels like to just feel out of control and feel like, I don't know where things are going to be going, even financially or this or that. A lot of things feel out of control. And to say, okay, we don't want to stuff those down. Let's make a commitment, you guys. Let's not stuff it down and kind of tough it out. But let's make sure we give each other time, periodically through the week, to really check in and see how we're doing, because this stuff is real and it's powerful. But the Lord is here, and he wants to help us. He wants to help us right here in this difficult situation, in the power of the Holy Spirit, to help us communicate with each other in a way that's compassionate, tender, patient, that kind of stuff. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think that was really good to just be able to express how we were doing, and then just to be still at different times, and just remember that our life is under the lordship of Jesus. I can't tell you how many times people asked us, probably more to Peter than myself, but what do you think the Lord's doing? What do you think the Lord's about? And I would often say, I'm not sure, but I know he's definitely trying to get our attention. And I know that he wants to remind us that he is the Lord over all of this, and that he doesn't want us to live in fear. And so I think to be able to remind one another of that, and to bring that back to mind, that fact, and just, I don't know if you all experience this, but I think the hardest thing has just been like a sense of powerlessness about it all. There's a lot of things I think we can control, but this was definitely something that felt, even week to week or day to day, we felt so powerless over it. So I think just really rooting ourselves more in the Lord was a really good thing. And then I think because we were spending so much time together in the same place, just to watch our speech and be really aware of the fact that we are really speaking to one another in a way that was honoring of each other and honoring of the Lord, and expressing value of one another and dignity. Not that we couldn't disagree, but just not to let pettiness or irritation really affect the way that we were speaking to one another.
Yeah, that's good. I just remember I wrote down just some of the Bible passages that we chewed on that were helpful for us, just kind of as reminders, like 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 9. St. Paul said, we make it our aim to please the Lord together. So we said, that I know that that's Deb's heart. I know that that's my heart. We don't always relate that way because we're imperfect like anybody else, but to say that let's agree to that and ask ourselves the question, how today can we, in the midst of this challenge, how can we please the Lord? And then there are things like, be quick to hear and slow to speak. I would repeat St. Francis's prayer about that kind of stuff. To be understood is to understand, to be loved is to love, that whole thing. And I think we really started to work on it more. I think I had to work on it more, to tell you the honest truth, to be as quick to speak, but to want to choose to say this. This was a bit of a change for me. And COVID was so every day that it was quite an opportunity to focus on something like this, was to say, be quick to hear Debbie, be quicker to hear what Debbie has to say or what Debbie's doing, and make room for Debbie or Rachel, then I'm quick to speak, because I usually, if I have an idea and I go, boom, I say it. And sometimes I can, without even thinking about it, because my personality is to say, and if in the context of this whole thing, it just felt the Lord's word to me was be still, and be still and know that I'm God, and that I'm in this, And I want you to take a deep breath every day and know that I've made you for this time. I have grace for you. And if you come and talk to me, if you just accept the quiet, accept the calm, that's not such an easy thing for an American to do. It's like go, 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 go. You know what I mean? Or it's like, we got to fix this, build that, do this, do that. It's like the Lord said, no, I just shut the world down. So just, I'm permitted the world to be shut down, and I want your attention, and I want to be close to you. And I want you to hear my voice, because that's the only place you're going to find strength. The strength that you need is the security that I want to help you connect with in our relationship, So, yeah, I mean, I think that was very big. Another passage, let's see. That's just another one about the tongue. James 3:6, taming the tongue is what he described. And then something even like this, James 5, do not grumble, brethren, against one another, that you may not be judged, but instead be tenderhearted toward each other, and it's easy to grumble when we're frustrated. And so I think the be still and know that I'm God was foundational, to be confident that the Lord was with us in this moment, and that he had a particular grace for us, not just us, like the two of us, but for his people in this time, if we would pursue it, and like the whole seek first the kingdom thing. And we said, let's try to do that, and help each other get there. And then speech was a big deal.
One more thing I want to say, and it didn't really apply as much to us because in ministry, we've worked in the home together, probably our whole married life in and out. But I think there are probably a lot of couples out there who are for the first time spending almost the whole day together, trying to work, having parallel jobs. Maybe the woman is, also has a job, but also trying to care for the kids. And the husband all of a sudden, like our kids were doing, the husband all of a sudden is working in this tiny room, or a closet or whatever he can find to do that. And I think it presents a different kind of challenge. And so I think it's good to figure out ways and talk about how can, like for the wife, and I'm thinking about my daughter-in-law and my son, how can I best support you as someone who has to work at home now? What can I do to make that happen? And him saying, now that you're homeschooling the kids, how can I best support you in doing that as well? And I know for them as a young couple with 4 very small children, they grew a lot as a family because they actually had to work through a lot of that stuff. So I think it's really good to have to do it. It's not very comfortable to have to do it, but I think it's a good challenge, especially for young families, to kind of the husband and wife to be talking regularly about how can we support one another in our vocation right now, today, in this time of COVID.
Yeah, no, it's very good.
So,
and I just think at moments feeling a lot of closeness and tenderness together, and to say, we really need each other, but also we've been given each other by the Lord for this time, and that experiencing a real tenderness toward each other and desire to say, I want to be in your corner. I want to be your friend. I want to be your friend. I want to be a really good friend to you during this difficult time that we're facing. And let's help each other do that. Let's help each other be that for each other. So, and it's easier to say than it is to do, I think, at times, with all the demands and the energy that's present. And it does require, and I think part of the grace for the moment is it's a little harder for maybe young couples who are listening. You got a lot of kids in the house, young kids in the house. That's a different situation. We're mostly empty nesters. And so it did give us a little bit more free time and the like. But as Debbie was saying, we know a handful of young families who, frankly, I was concerned about one family in particular that I knew, that I thought, wow, if the kids aren't going to school and they're all there all day long, that place is going to be crazy, thinking it's going to be really hard and the pressure is going to be super tough. And I'm amazed at how they and other friends that they talked with who had young families were helping each other out, and they developed a rhythm for their life. And then throughout this year, no joke, they said, this is the best year of our marriage and our time with our kids that we've ever had, and then we actually visited them. You could see that a real change, and there was a little more peace in the situation, and the kids loved being together. Liked being together most of the time. They weren't perfect, but there was a way in which they were living together with greater kind of tenderness and grace. And so it was really wonderful to see. And the key for them was too, okay, this is hard. there's someone here who's stronger than all of this to help us. And if we together pursue him and we just do what he's leading us to do, he knows our unique family. He knows our unique relationship. He knows the challenges that we're facing, economic, emotional challenges, whatever we have in the house. He will help us if we trust him, and it sounds so obvious in a certain way, but boy, does it help to let go. It really helps to let go, to give to him a lot of that stress that's there in fear. And because fear really does produce a lot of anxiety, and fear is the fear of death. I said at the beginning, I'll end here and Deb can have a close. The fear of death, friends, is a disordered energy. Was that for an interesting thought? It has power and it creates anxiety and it weighs on us. And the Lord wants to come and take away that fear and give us peace to say, even though all this looks really uncomfortable and unpredictable, we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay because the Lord is here and he's literally with us and we're not alone. And we're going to decide to be friends and to draw close to him together. So
I think the last thing, and then we're going to send you off with some discussion time, is the last thing I'd say is the importance of just living in gratitude, because gratitude is the thing that really counteracts the fear and everything else that goes with it. So I think just to be able to sit down occasionally and say, what are we grateful for during this time? So I know we're grateful. A year ago, our son and daughter-in-law came over for Mother's Day, and they told us on that Mother's Day a year ago, they were expecting a baby, their first baby. And so here we are a year later, that little baby is now 4 months old, Jacob Giovanni. And we are grateful that during the time of COVID, they had a baby and now we have a new grandson. So just a lot of different blessings that we saw. That's probably, Jacob's probably our biggest blessing. And then we have another one on the way as well. But there's so much that we have to be grateful for. And so much the Lord has done. And when we're in the midst of something that's difficult, sometimes it's hard to remember what we do have to be grateful for. Mm-hmm. So good health and the way the Lord has cared for us. So we are going to stop talking now and give you two, to the couples, time to really discuss either something we said or something that's kind of tugging on your heart. So Peter, do you have a little prompt for them?
I do. Yeah. So the fundamental question is, what do you think the Lord, or you feel the Lord has been saying to you during this time? Because that's kind of the most important sort of piece. And then also related to that, what did you hear in the talk that you felt like you could relate to? What was encouraging, and what do you think you might be able to apply to your own situation as a couple? I think that covers it. So we'll see you in a little bit.